Welcome to Foster Hill Road Cemetery, nestled in the heart of Bedford, a serene haven. Every Thursday morning, amidst the quietude of this historical resting place, you'll spot small groups adorned in vibrant, yellow, high-visibility jackets. These jackets signify more than just a sense of unity. They symbolize the dedicated volunteers who tirelessly devote their time and effort to the preservation and enhancement of this remarkable Victorian cemetery. But who exactly are the Friends of the Cemetery? And what compels them to return week after week, rain or shine?
I'm Margaret Carpenter, and I was one of the first Friends of the cemetery.
I'm Ted Spirito. I came to the cemetery introduced by a friend, and I think it was anything between 10 to 12 years ago.
Right, well, my name is Colin Wolfe, and I'm obviously a friend of Bedford Cemetery. I have been a friend now I'm in my 11th year. Came about by accident or by design, depends on your point of view, of course.
Hi, my name's Sue. I've been a friend for probably about 10 years now.
Yeah, right. I'm Malcolm Ayres. I've been here for many, many years, one of the first group that come.
My name is Linda Ayres, and I started at Foster Hill Road Cemetery as a volunteer about 10 years ago.
My name's Ian. I'm a friend of Bedford Cemetery. I've been coming for about 2 years now.
That somebody who lived north of the cemetery was worried it was getting very overrun and overgrown with vegetables of all sorts, of plants, anything. He decided he'd form a friend, so we had a meeting, and at the first meeting we had 8 people.
I come mainly because he asked me. We started as a group. In them days, this place was in a bit of a state, one way or the other.
And when I retired, my wife, Ted was saying that they could always do with some help. So the mistake with my wife was saying, Colin's available, he'll come and help you. So from that time, I've been a friend of Bedford Cemetery.
But a friend of mine who lives a few doors down said to me, "Can you do a spreadsheet?" So I said, "Yes, I can do a spreadsheet." She said, and she explained that she was a friend of the cemetery because she loves gardening, etc. After doing the spreadsheet, I then became the membership secretary. Well, fancy that.
The way I got involved with the Friends of the Cemetery was the fact I came down on a Heritage Day. I walked into the door just to see what it was all about because it's an open house, and of course the man at the door was adamant that I knew him and that I couldn't recognise this guy at all. And it turned out to be Ted.
I came here really because my husband started and thought it would be a good idea if I came along. I was reluctant at first because I needed space from my husband for a few hours a week, being honest. But anyway, he persuaded me, and I started cleaning gravestones, moving the ivory, and we found some quite interesting stories.
I live locally, and this was always my go-to place. The quiet place to go, take a wander, for contemplation, enjoy the scenery and the wildlife, just take it easy. Became involved with the group simply by meeting members of the group already working here.
Gradually we got more people, we had various talks, not necessarily anything to do with the cemetery, about anything. It might be trains, it might be animals, it might be anything. You could, the great train robbery, anything to get people coming in. And gradually the numbers increased, and we realised we could get them to come more enthusiastically if we provided tea and cake. And so that is a standing joke now, that we say some people come for the tea and cake, they don't bother what exactly we're doing.
And so we decided to start doing something in the actual cemetery itself first, because this place wasn't livable really at all. So we started in the cemetery, just bringing a flask along and this, that, and it worked.
But we were lucky enough to get a lottery grant to actually do up the chapel, etc. And part of the lottery grant was to get a website. So I now look after the website. I'm no longer the membership secretary because I managed to hand that over, but I've also grown to love this place. You know, I help out now, you know, with in the cemetery with cleaning graves and doing the gardening, picking up litter, much as, you know, as everybody else does.
Originally, when I first joined in the back end of 2012, 2013, we did a lot towards the northwest of the cemetery, removing ivy and revealing headstones, memorials that hadn't been seen for many a day.
But my favourite part and what I was doing most of the while was to restore the graves. If a grave was blown over, there was many graves back in them days that were still lost under the ivy and under bushes. And if we cleared one and we found a gravestone under there, we used to lift it up, and if it was broken, I'd repair it. We had one night where we had a great gale, and we came back and there was a massive great tree came down. Why it came down, I don't know. I think it was rotten. I think it destroyed, must have been a dozen graves. So I sort of spent my time sort of repairing all the graves, and this is what I enjoyed.
The person that was here at the time asked me if I'd like to do some research. I'd never done any research at all, but it became so much that there was a lot of people in Bedford that came here and said, well, you know, can you help us out? And I've become addicted to it. And used to usually do it at night until about 1 a.m, because once you start, you can't finish. You sort of think, well, I'll finish this now, but I couldn't finish. And I've met so many interesting people through the research.
It was interesting to find that I'm also drawn to what we call the west wall, where the plaques are, because on that wall there is a plaque to a man who served in the same regiment as my great-grandfather's brother did in the First World War, and it was a Canadian regiment, whereas my great-grandfather's brother didn't survive.
We started doing guided walks. We did at that time have our first chairman, which was Richard Wildman, who was a leading local historian. Well, of course, he would take guided walks and he could remember all these things. Well, the rest of us trailed around, frantically taking notes and trying to remember what on earth it was he'd said. And he sadly died about 3 or 4 years ago. But we gradually built up our, knowledge. And so if someone takes you on a walk, I will take people to things that interest me, and somebody else might go, they'll take to something else completely.
Favourite places within the cemetery, I suppose, the Cross of Sacrifice, which is the Blomfield Cross of Sacrifice for the World War I and World War II memorial, where we have our annual ceremony. Supported and looked after by the immediate area by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, of course. But we have 221 Commonwealth War graves at this cemetery, almost a fifth of all the Commonwealth War graves within Bedfordshire are here. Favourite graves, or graves that come to mind because of my background, because of my interest, we have the first Bedfordshire County Chief Constable, Edward Boltby. He's buried here. He was a Chief Constable from 1840 to 1871. And of course, that was when the Police Act came out, where all the counties were required to have police forces. So we've got probably over 100 years of Bedfordshire's Chief Constable in about 4 or 5 graves.
I went up there with Margaret. She was doing one of her talks, which she does very well, Margaret. She's an excellent, speaker. And she pointed out the obelisk and she said, we don't know anything about that obelisk at all. She said, it's just covered in grass and weeds and bushes and we could hardly see it. And so it got me interested. So then I started looking into it. And about 2 months to 6 months later, I started getting bits about it, you know. And it's quite an interesting story, but it's too long for me to talk to in this interview. Right.
I don't know that there is a particularly favourite place. It does depend on the season, because if it's autumn, I love looking at the trees. If it's spring, I love looking at the spring flowers. There, I just like wandering about and seeing what there is, especially in the springtime. And the trees here are just wonderful, and they're just coming into colour, and you notice the colour there. But also in the winter, when it's foggy here, you know, the atmosphere in the cemetery when it's foggy and there's no leaves on the tree, there's nobody here, because I don't know whether people don't like walking in the cemetery when it's foggy.
I'm a Bedfordian, and I was born and brought up in Bedford, so most of my great-granddad and my great-grandmother, all their siblings are all buried here. I used to come down reasonably often and tidy up their graves, sort of thing anyhow. I found many other younger members of my grandfather's children were buried here, and we've got ensured they got crosses up for them. I used to make the wooden crosses at home, used to do it in the garage sort of thing, and then bring them up and install them. And then we used to put a little plaque on there just to show where they were if there was no stone for them.
I've met so many interesting people through the research here and abroad, like a lot of the people that went over to Australia as the £10 Poms in the 50s and 60s. Of course, their parents and grandparents are buried here, so we had quite long conversations with them. In fact, they've actually come over to England, and we've pointed out their ancestors' graves, but there's so many stories here. Well, you just don't stop, really. They're so interesting. I just sort of think of these people. They made Bedford.
I feel I'm often drawn to the Commonwealth War Graves plot, the Scottish soldiers that passed away here in Bedford through disease and never got to the front.
Well, I've always been a great lover of obviously the Scottish. It's just something different, you know, all them Scottish soldiers being here, and we've had them come and you know, with their bagpipes and their drums and that. But one day we did have them come and it poured with rain. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. It absolutely poured down. We didn't know what to do. So we decided we'd have them to come into the chapel. As they all marched in, and you hear bagpipes in there, you know they're bagpipes. There's no doubt about that, they're bagpipes. And as they come in, British Legion had all their flags, and as they went through, they hit all them lights that's hanging up with their flag. And I was standing there watching, and you know, they knocked them, and they must be on a little bit of a swivel. And so as they knocked them, they went back to where they were, and they was all. So that's a good memory, isn't it?
I think perhaps the place I'm fond of is something which we established comparatively recently. We had a couple of chairmen, and then we had a long-term chairman here. And when he died, we said, well, we'd like to remember him in some way, so we'll have an orchard. So there was an area where they didn't bury anybody. We have, I think, 52 trees there now. We have one medlar, two medlars, one mulberry, one fig, 3 pears. And most of the others are apples, but we have rare apples. We don't have your ordinary ones that you go and buy in the market.
And of course, I'm aware that, you know, graves and burials is not to everyone's sort of taste, but I hope they don't think I have a morbid outlook on life, but it gives me a sense of satisfaction of, you know, looking for the graves, repairing them as we do, and that's something that Ted, Malcolm and I have done over the last several years, and there are a number of headstones now standing which before were lying flat on the ground. So
the Friends decided that this is a really important part of history of Bedford. You know, it's really important for the community that they can actually come and, you know, and enjoy this heritage site here, really. So, so they started to clear the graves and pick up litter, and it's really grown from then, and we've just kept it going. And, you know, we do get complimented now on the fact that it does look really nice. There is still, some people like the long grass, some people don't like the long grass, some people like the wildflowers, some people don't like the wildflowers. But, you know, in general, I think it's really important that we just do what we do, keeping this place alive.
Yeah, I think it's important to me, really. I think it's a place to relax, to meet people, and you're doing some good, and you enjoy what you're doing. And once you've achieved restoring a gravestone that had been damaged for probably centuries, it's a feeling, I'm not good with words, but a feeling of contentment, and you see it all scattered on the floor in lots of little pieces, and once you've finished it, it's up and it's there, hopefully for another century or so. In a generation's time, somebody replacing the stones that I've replaced. And
occasionally we have generous donations, and we did have one which was a very generous donation, and it came in anonymous. We then decided we would put a seat in, but we would make a very special seat. So we got a local carpenter who managed to get an whole oak trunk, and he has carved this tree specifically, saying your short lives are never forgotten, and he's carved animals over it, and we have put it near where the ones which where all the many children are buried. And so we think, and it's a very popular seat because you go past, there's always somebody sitting on it because it doesn't look like any other seat.
Well, as I said before, what keeps me coming back, it becomes addictive. You just want to find out more and more and more, and of course the people that you're with as well. We're all interested in the same thing, and we can sit there and have coffee breaks and just chat about it.
Keeping this place alive, you know, I mean, all Bedford's history is here in this place. So, you know, I think if it wasn't for the Friends, this place wouldn't look like it did. So
we all get together because we all laugh and joke and just enjoy what we do. And I find it an achievement.
I think it's a sense of purpose from the point of view of remembering the people that made Bedford. I think that's very important, and honouring their memories. And it's to help guide people to actual specific grave plots. And in some cases, like we did last year, bring closure to a family. They never knew where their sibling was. Now they do, and they have that closure. And that's just so special to be part of that and help bring closure to some families.
So, I mean, a lot of people will say, oh, I remember one woman saying to me, well, you've got a funny hobby, but I think they probably think you're gruesome, but it's not that. Because if people like us don't tell stories about people that are buried here, because I always say, here lies the history of Bedford. You'll probably see it on our logo, but that is so true. So we can't really let that go, can we? We've got to keep going at it.
Well, next fight. Well, I think it'll carry on more or less the way it's going, I hope. I don't know whether we'll be here, you know, one or two of us are getting a bit long in the tooth now, I've got to be honest. There is younger ones coming. I hope it'll carry on more or less as it is.